Hello, good afternoon. My name is Sharon Barron. I'm the manager for the Regional Perinatal Program here at Oshai Children's, and today we're going to talk about infant safe sleep. So in this next slide, when we talk to families, this is really how we hope to bring down the infant mortality rate. So meeting families where they are, understanding what they know, understanding what they don't know, and not blaming or shaming them for not knowing. Because this information, I tell families all the time, as hospitals, we get this evidence because that's how we practice and we set up our standards. Families wouldn't normally have access to some of the research and the things that we see. So it's our job to let the families know why we say the things we say and where the evidence is behind that supports it. So when the AAP pushed out their new guidelines in 2022, they highlighted smoking cessation, they highlighted breastfeeding. All of these are things that can help prevent infant death related to safe sleep. So temperature and thermoregulation is something that you're going to hear a lot in the hospital for a newborn because it's really important that a baby be able to maintain their temperature. Families will sometimes overbundle their babies and the babies can get too hot. And because the babies have an unstable autonomic nervous system or brain development, it can cause the infant to get overheated and die. And so we started looking at what are the things that we can share with families when they're here. Every one of our families that delivers here and at Millard Fillmore gets an infant safe sleep swaddle sack. And so for the families that come into the pediatric side, they also get a sleep sack. We don't necessarily give swaddle sacks for babies that are over 28 days. And so what the difference is a swaddle sack, we can take the baby and we can swaddle them and bundle them like they were when they were in the mom's bellies, helping them calm and then helping them feel secure when they sleep. You can dress a baby under those swaddle sacks. And what they typically recommend is that you dress the baby in one more layer that you have and not put anything on their head and not put any blankets around them in the bed. So no blankets, no crib bumpers, no pillows, no hats. Hats is the latest recommendation. Now, if your baby was in NICU and they had trouble maintaining their temperature, if you've been given education at discharge around maintaining their temperature and thermoregulation, then do what you're told at discharge. The recommendation is from the pediatricians, once babies are indoors, after they go home, they should not need to wear hats to maintain their temps. And if they are, then you probably need to see your pediatrician. So when we talk about wearable blankets and we talk about sleep sacks, we also need to help you understand the temperature in the room should be anywhere from 68 to 72 degrees. One way that you can check the temperature of a baby is just by putting your hand on their neck and chest. And if it's hot to touch, they might be dressed too warm. And so try to regulate your baby and pay attention to the signs of overheating, which are sweaty, clammy skin, flushing, red, or hot to touch. One of the other things that we talk a lot about is tummy time. Families often ask or tell us their babies prefer to sleep on their stomach. And that may be the case, but that's not the safest place for your baby to be sleeping. And so what we try to tell them is if you want to do tummy time, then monitor them during tummy time. And I have a little bit of a picture here that shows babies develop pretty quickly in that 0 to 4 month age. And so like a newborn doesn't do a whole lot, but at 1 month, they should be holding their head up and kind of looking around. And they'll start kind of realizing they have arms and hands and reaching for things. But by 3 to 4 months, they're really starting to push up. And so if you have a baby in a swaddle sack, you need to pay attention to those milestones because you don't want to keep them in the swaddle sack because if the baby can push up, they need their arms out. And that's when you transition into a sleep sack that has the arms out. And so it's still zipped up with feet and you can still keep the babies warm, but it allows the babies to be able to use their arms. And if they roll over, they're not going to be trapped in that sleep sack. The other thing that we talk a lot about in the community is when they start to roll 0 to 4 months, we don't know when that's going to be because every baby is going to be different. It could take 6 months for a baby to roll over. So just know that not every baby meets the milestones the way the books say they do. And so paying attention to your baby, talking to your pediatrician to really understand what milestones your babies are in is very helpful in those first few years. And so if your baby starts rolling over, you want to make sure that you have changed from swaddle and into the sleep sack, but you've also, on your bassinets and your pack and plays, you've lowered them down to that lower level so they're not going to roll out of the cribs or the cribettes. So a lot of families also talk to us about reflux and GERD, which is our technical term or clinical term. So it's gastroesophageal reflux disease, and a lot of babies have it. My second baby had it, and it can be pretty scary because I've seen babies throw up an entire feed. And so there's a lot of fear when you're putting your baby down on their back. But just know, like, as you can see in this picture, they are better on their back than they are if they are in their stomach. You will also hear pediatricians that aren't caught up in the evidence and current in the evidence talk about maybe putting your baby at a slight incline. I would also challenge you to ask those questions because in the latest research, the incline is not recommended anymore. And so what they've showed us through other research projects is that any kind of incline over 10% can really increase a baby's work of breathing. And so I realize when you're coming into the hospital with sick babies during RSV and flu, a lot of times you'll see those babies elevated in the beds. Don't role model what you see here in the hospital because that's actually therapeutic positioning that we do to help the babies clear secretions when they're sick. It's not something you should be doing at home. So please check with your pediatrician when your babies are sick. Make sure that someone has eyes on them and can help you sleep peacefully when your baby has an illness, because sometimes that's one of the hardest things as a parent to go through. So the reason we recommend no incline is because in the fatality reviews, I told you earlier, we hear about babies that are left in, if they're fussy, we just put them in the swing overnight and then the baby didn't wake up. And so a lot of times people don't understand that that flat surface really helps keep the baby's neck elevated, their airway open. And when you have them elevated, sometimes that airway can close because the babies I say they're super pliable, which means that they have a lot of cartilage in the first few months of life. And so all of that is really starting to form and tighten through the muscles. So pay attention, ask your pediatrician for those recommendations, but watch your incline. So if your babies fall asleep in a car seat, take them out and put them to bed. You'll get pretty good at it after a while, I promise. Here's a quick slide on understanding the milestones to get babies to their first birthday. One of the education requests that we had at a baby expo last year was really going through the ages and stages and why safe sleep really is important at those times. One of the things that we talked a lot about in that education is that 0 to 4 month and how important it is, because that's when we really see a lot of our infant mortality deaths. And so the highest number of SIDS deaths occur, and if you look on the slide, it's 1 to 4 months. So babies do not really have regular sleep cycles until 4 to 6 months. And I know as a parent, sleeping, they sleep anywhere from 16 to 17 hours a day, only in 1 to 2 hour incremental time frames. And so as an adult, that's not good rest for us, right? So you're going to be exhausted. And when we say sleep, when the baby sleeps, it's really important in those first few months that you try to get rest when they rest. If you're sleeping with your baby, put their baby in a crib or put the baby in a pack and play in the same room with you as you nap. There are different cribettes now that kind of attach to the side of the bed, and that does allow for another space for the baby to be separate from the parent. I don't know how people normally sleep, but when you're sleeping in a bed with an infant, it's not restful sleep because you're paranoid that you're going to roll into the infant, and that is some of the fatalities that happens. Another milestone we talked about earlier, so when do babies really start pushing up and rolling over? It's that 2 to 4 month stage. So just watch your babies. They're going to give you the cues you need to understand where you need to be when you're putting them to sleep and the things that they will need for that. So when I talk about brain development, a lot of times they talk about unstable brain anatomy for an infant. Basically what that is saying is that there is an autonomic nervous system that regulates the body. And so it regulates your blood pressure, it regulates your heart rate. And so that is really unstable in an infant until about 2 to 4 months. And so I think one of the examples that we give in the community is, as an adult, if you put your face into a pillow and then you just sit there and breathe and breathe and breathe, you have an instinct inside your brain that's going to tell you to turn and breathe in oxygen. Babies don't have that for the first few months of life. So they don't know how to do that. Even though they can turn their head, they might not. So that's the other piece of science that's important when we educate families. So when we say that more than 90% of all SIDS deaths occur before 6 months, that is what the data is showing us. And so the states have been working on fatality reviews for quite a while. The CDC publishes the vital statistics. You can go to their website and look it up. They have tons of information there. And this is where we get a lot of that data. And as we work through it, we've learned that if we can really set families up for success early, that's really where our goal should be. I'm not saying that when a baby's 8 months, they're out of the woods. Babies typically aren't out of the woods for that first full year. So when you hit that first birthday, that's a huge milestone for infant safe sleep and infant mortality. And so celebrating that birthday is celebrating a huge win as a family. And also getting your baby through safety for that first year is something we should all celebrate, because it's a lot of work for us getting these babies to hit that first milestone. And so one of the I think tips and tricks that we published, because when we started doing this research, we looked at the Consumer Product Safety Commission. It's the only federally regulated entity that's publishing data that is also regulating laws around what's safe use for infants. And we teach families all the time. They have a free app. They also have a website, and it's the cpsc.gov for those of you that are listening and can't see the slide. Basically, you can go there and you can check anything that you've been given for babies to use. So if it's a car seat, if it's a chair, if it's a play yard, those things are looked at and those things are evaluated by this group here at the Consumer Product Safety Commission. There are other entities that are working alongside Cribs for Kids, which is a national organization that certifies birthing hospitals for safe sleep, which we are Gold Safe Sleep certified here at Oshai and now at Millard Fillmore as well. And basically that just means that we do continuous work around learning where are the education pitfalls and where are the education opportunities that we can share with families to give them the most knowledge they need when they're trying to make decisions about where to put their babies for car seats, for sleeping, and just for general play. And so a lot of what we know now is that the baby beds, the pack and plays, all of these have changed in the last probably 10 years. And just because it's new and it's popular doesn't mean that it's safe. And so if you're not checking your equipment, that is something that you can actively do now, because what we also know is that people right now, money's tight. And so people are handing down things to families. And the other part of that is that things get passed on to grandparents, right? So what we need to let people know is that we need to check that equipment that they're getting. So if it's not at your house, where is your baby sleeping when you're at work? Or where is your baby sleeping when you have to run errands? Make sure that equipment is safe too, and have those conversations. I told you that a lot of our generational conversations with grandparents is they just don't have this information because it wasn't actively given to them when they had their babies. And so meeting everyone in that space so that they all understand that it's everyone's responsibility, it really is the community's responsibility to help. We as nurses here at the hospital, we cannot hit every one of these education points every time we have a baby born. And so the nurses do what they can. They give out safe sleep. We have videos. We have other things. But it's a lot of information these families are being hit with in the first 24 to 72 hours that their babies are here. And so we need help in the community. We need our community-based organizations also standardizing the message around safe sleep. So we partner with a lot of different places and a lot of different organizations around the community here in all 8 counties to make sure that we're standardizing that message so that families have all of the information and they know where to get it. Raising awareness for change is really what we're trying to do. So Cribs for Kids pushed out 12 steps for safe sleep. We have posters all around the hospital with those steps. We also have that information available for families on discharge. We are also always looking for different websites, blogs, articles, different ways that we can share the information. HealthyU is another avenue for us to share. So we are always learning how we can advocate for the infants and families, and we hope that you are also doing your job as families to know which sites are the sites that you should be looking at, because social media is not always correct and the things that they say. So make sure you're validating what social media is telling you. You'll see pictures of babies in these cute little beds with baby bumpers and blankets, and that's not the image of safe sleep. So please be aware of that. Know how to recognize it, know what to look for, and create your space that keeps babies safe. And we'll be celebrating a lot more birthdays in the future with our infants. Here's a quick slide for free resources for families. You can go here. Everything you can print is free. You can order it as a hospital or an organization in the community. And I think one thing we need to remember is that we often don't share things with fathers. And there's a huge call to action right now to include dads in this education. Dads can also be those safety champions. When a mom is breastfeeding, a dad can take the baby when the mom falls asleep and put the baby back in their bed. Dads can also be that second check for moms. If they're too tired, you can pump, dads can feed. There's other ways to include the dads in on this education. And we need to make sure that all of our birthing families have these resources and understand their role in infant safe sleep. So as long as you follow the ABCs of safe sleep, that's a great place to start. We want to thank you today for joining us in HealthyU, and we look forward to you delivering here at Oshai Children's and Millard Fillmore. Thank you.